Welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most urgent topics in the never-dull world of Indiana basketball. This is our 116th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 508th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, April 4th, 2019. I'm your host, Jared Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment occurred at 4:36 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon when Jeff Rabjohns of 24/7 Sports posted about the latest prospect to schedule an official visit to Bloomington, which capped an encouraging week of news when it comes to potential newcomers for next season. The subject of Rabjohns' post was Lester Quinones, a four-star guard out of Florida, who will be visiting Bloomington the weekend of April 13th, and yes, that is little 5-week, smart scheduling by the IU staff. Quinones is known as one of the best shooters in the class of 2019, which is really all any IU fan needs to know to be excited about this development. For a while now, we've been telling you not to pay too much attention to individual recruits until official visits get scheduled and taken, because until that happens, it's tough to know if there is legitimate interest on both sides. Well, here we go. Memphis is the perceived leader in this recruitment, but Archie and his staff will at least get their shot. And that wasn't the only piece of interesting recruiting news during the same week in which Clifton and Jake Forrester announced their intentions to transfer and Romeo made his NBA departure official. More on that later. Archie Miller hosted center Joey Brunk for an unofficial visit, which by all accounts went well. Brunk seems especially important now, given that he can play immediately, will have 2 years of eligibility, and the Hoosiers are suddenly much thinner along the front court. And perhaps most intriguing of all, the staff upheaval at Alabama and LSU seems to have opened the door for Indiana to re-enter the recruitment of Trendon Watford. During his recent appearance on the Hoosier Hysterics podcast, Christian Watford said Indiana has a legit shot, especially if Romeo Langford goes pro, which has now happened. And while it still seems likely the Hoosiers are facing an uphill battle for Trendon, it's encouraging to be back in the ballgame for a player from an incredible family whose size and skill set would fit perfectly on next season's roster. The Hoosiers now project to have 3 open scholarships. Will they get Quinones, Brunk, and Trendon? Almost assuredly not. 2 out of 3 would be incredible. Even just 1 out of 3 would be solid given the overall landscape. Regardless, as roster turnover season heats up, the Hoosiers seem to be in interesting positions with a number of players who would fill specific needs for next season and beyond. Now we'll see which of them Archie Miller is able to close. All right, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. To my left, he is the Chris Beard of Girls Youth Sports Coaching in Cincinnati. He is the president emeritus of the Robert Johnson Fan Club, and he remains one of the world's most respected and fun-loving bracketologists.
Well, it's been a fun week, Jared. Let me tell you, this is fun. This kind of game is fun. This was fun. All right, well, this was fun.
He is Andy Bottoms. Andy, what is your Bottoms line on the last week in Indiana basketball?
Well, so far, given the way my week has gone, non-IU basketball related, I would not categorize this week as fun. So at least it changed things up a little bit.
Oh.
Not bad, not terrible, not enjoyable, but not terrible. So, I mean, from an IU perspective, you feel like you're going to get through one of these off seasons where you don't have a ton of roster turnover, and then you turn around and look, and I don't know that in a vacuum any of the departures were surprising. Clifton's in particular, I don't think people were surprised by. Romeo, certainly not. The Forrester one. When you look back at it, we texted about this a little bit earlier in the week. When you kind of put some of the pieces together, it makes a little bit more sense. But you do have a situation now where you certainly have more roster turnover than you thought you would, and more scholarships to work with. So it'll be interesting to see. You mentioned a number of guys there. What really happens, and we categorize this offseason as one that was going to be pretty interesting for a number of reasons. And if these recent departures are any indication, there's going to be a lot of people, running to scramble to get YouTube highlights of various high school or college players to figure out where they might fit in and how they might fit in. But I do think it gives another opportunity to kind of find some guys that fill needs on the team and go from there. So it'll be, like I said, we talked about this offseason being interesting, and it's, through just a couple weeks, which it seems like even more quite frankly, than that since the Wichita State game. Things are shaping up to be pretty interesting, and now we'll kind of see. There's a lot of variability in what the roster might look like, and that's intriguing in some ways. And I look forward to figuring out who's going to fill these spots, and us all getting really excited and creating the idealized version of all of these guys, and talking ourselves into why this can be a Final Four team.
That's what off seasons are for, Andy.
Absolutely, it is. Lots of time.
And to my right, he is a senior writer for the Big Lead, no longer just a columnist, a senior writer. He's a co-host of The Hangover. And with Romeo Langford's announcement on Thursday that he will be entering the NBA draft, it means that Ryan has once again been proven incorrect with his proclamations of a player being on a 2-year plan.
Romeo Langford
was on a 2-year plan.
He is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what is your rant?
That's not even funny. It's not even... Just in case anybody's watching or listening, I did not say Romeo was on a 2-year plan. Somebody has doctored that footage. That's not cool, man. To knock on my credibility. Romeo Langford
was on a 2-year plan.
Yeah.
Sounds very smooth. I hear no edit in there at all.
Like me.
The second part of that almost doesn't even sound like Ryan, to be perfectly honest.
I know, honestly.
It was a very bad recording from the old days.
The old days. Anyway, we're talking about the roster turnover, and you say that there's more roster turnover than you thought, and I agree to some extent, Andy, but I also think that it's the core of the roster is going to be the same. I mean, it's going to be what we expected. Romeo's gone. We expected that. Clifton Moore, I think most people expected a transfer there of the group of like Clifton Moore, Jake Forrester, Race Thompson, Jerome Hunter, those kind of forward guys. I think that most people expected Clifton gone, and I think there was an outside shot all along that Jake Forrester would be gone. And if you look at it from a rational perspective, if Joey Brunk's going to come on, and given a lot of the indications, it seems like Joey Brunk really wants to be at Indiana. I don't know if that's going to end up being the final destination for him, but it seems like he's really interested in Indiana, and Indiana is certainly very interested in him with how quickly they set up a visit, brought him on. You had recruits tweeting at him, Trace Jackson Davis, most notably. It seems like that there's a lot of momentum for that. If Brunk's going to be there, if Trace Jackson Davis is going to be there, if Race Thompson's going to be there, who we know Archie Miller really likes, I don't see a whole lot of playing time for Jake Forrester and Clifton Moore in their future, especially given that Brunk is a 2-year guy off of his transfer. If he was a 1-year guy, maybe it makes sense for Jake to stick around and develop for another year. But it really doesn't make sense for him to sit there and be, sitting behind a bunch of guys that he either has as much time left as or almost as much time left. So I think both of those transfers make a lot of sense. VJ Blackman transferring, I mean, I think VJ should go find a place to play if he can for his final years. But you look at the roster turnover, and somebody, I think it was Chronic Hoosier, said that 9 of 17 spots are now going to be open. But the 8 guys that are coming back out of that group are exactly who you wanted to be back next year. You've got Rob Finnessy. You've got, hopefully, Jerome Hunter. You've got Race Thompson, Deron Davis, Devontae Green, Justin Smith. I mean, the guys who played a lot this year are going to be back next year. So it's not like they've lost a big piece in there anywhere, and you're hoping to add guys. And actually, some of us were thinking, I hope an extra roster spot or two are available, so it's not just a 2-man class, maybe a 3-man class. We kind of wanted some transfers, some veterans to come in here, and there are a lot of good transfers out there. This has been a very big transfer year. Villanova just lost its 5-star point guard, Javon Quinterly. Alabama's losing Kyra Lewis. There's a lot of guys out there who are really good. Maybe IU doesn't dip their toe in on any of those guys, but there's a lot of good guys out there to potentially bring in. So I would say that, turnover, by the way, is natural at a big program. But I also think that it can be a good thing. I think it can be a good thing for the players and the coaches. And I hope that Jake and Clifton find a place where they can play. And those are guys with potential. I hope they find a place they can play. I just think they're behind guys here who we know are better than them and are higher level players than them. And if you look at the recruiting rankings and you look at the performance on the court, that has held up. And Trace Jackson Davis is going to jump both of those guys in the rotation next year. He just is. He's a fantastic player. He might jump Race in the rotation next year and be a guy who's going to be here for 2-3 years and be a dominant player. And so seeing those two guys play against each other in practice and everything is going to be great because it's going to get to see them battle each other. But those two guys doing that in practice is also going to leave Jake and Clifton out in the cold. So I wish those guys the best. They were great citizens while they were here. They were great representatives of the university. They need to go find their home and go find a place where they can play.
All right, here's what we're going to talk about this week. We'll talk a little bit more about Jake and Clifton transferring and Romeo going pro and what that means. Then we'll discuss IU's recruiting targets and reflect a little bit on Romeo's freshman season. And then we're going to answer your questions, including one about scheduling and another about Calbert Cheaney memories, which should be fun to answer. All of that coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. But before we get to all of that, let's talk a little bit about sleep and why you need to buy your next mattress from our friends and fellow IU grads and fans at Comfort Option. First off, they will actually come to your house. Seriously, if you live in Indy or Bloomington, you can schedule Comfort Option's revolutionary in-home mattress service.
There's a van with a bed in it, and they just put the mattress together right there, and you lay on it, and you decide if you like it or not.
Yeah, plus...
They don't charge you extra to come build the mattress at your house.
They don't. And if you don't live in Indy or Bloomington, you can still order one of their Alpha mattresses online, and they'll deliver it anywhere in the U.S. Longtime Assembly Call listener Megan Mahaffey, whose voice that you just heard, she and her husband went with the Alpha Medium.
We've been really, really pleased with how the Alpha Medium has felt. I am physically sleeping better.
Also, Megan's husband no longer snoring, which is a massive bonus, obviously. And to top it all off, Comfort Option offers a 30-90 satisfaction guarantee to make sure that you love your mattress. Bottom line, they want the mattress buying experience to be more pleasant than it has ever been.
The whole thing, start to finish, went incredibly smoothly.
So go to comfortoption.com right now and either order your Alpha mattress or schedule your in-home mattress store service today. And when you do it, use the promo code ASSEMBLY to get $50 off your purchase. Again, comfortoption.com, promo code ASSEMBLY for $50 off. Get the mattress that's right for you. Don't leave your sleep to chance. It is too important.
We want you to live.
Yes, we definitely do.
Can we get some basketball, please?
Yes, we can get some basketball. We're back to talking basketball. By the way, I do want to be completely clear because someone did ask in the chat mob. Ryan never actually thought Romeo Langford was on a 2-year plan. It's a long-running joke back from like the 3rd season of the show when Ryan did think Noah Vonleh was on a 2-year plan and will defend that erroneous take to this day.
Here's what I will say. Somebody told Ryan that Noah had planned to be on a 2-year plan and changed his mind.
Yes.
So
that's where that comes from.
Yes, it's a funny drop. I get it, but not the Romeo one. That's just misleading. Romeo Langford
Was on a 2-year plan.
Just
thanks.
Not the best sound editing, but hey, I had to do it quickly. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about Clifton and Jake transferring. And let me pose this to you, and Andy, I'll start with you. Of those two guys, I mean, I think they both had potential. I think, we're both curious how they will be as players, as upperclassmen. Which one do you think Indiana fans are more likely to regret not having, say, in 2020, when those guys would be juniors or seniors? Because I posed this question in our discussion community, and 83% of respondents said Jake, 17% said Clifton. Where would you side on that? Like, who do you think has the most upside and would have been better long-term in this program?
I would say Jake. Maybe that's just you've seen 1 year less of him, but I guess I would go back to, with Clifton. I don't know that he was ever a great fit, but regardless, I think there were opportunities for really both of these guys this year. Had they been, again, we all have to assume this, playing well enough in practice and picking things up quickly enough, there were minutes to be had with all the injuries and things like that, and they were really not able to find the floor in that case. And you could probably even make the same argument with Clifton a year ago that as a freshman, yeah, that was maybe a tall ask for a guy coming in to be able to step in. But I guess I would say, he had 2 years to really find a way to carve out some minutes for himself and wasn't able to do it. And maybe that system fit or not, just not a great fit for his skill set. So certainly for a guy like that, you look for him to find some place where he's going to get more playing time, likely at a lower level. And we've seen guys have success in doing that. And so hopefully he does as well. But I think you could see, at least from a, energy standpoint, kind of raw was the way that Forrester was described by a lot of people coming in, and just seemed like the kind of frontline guy that would fit well as a rim protector in the system that Archie had. So you could kind of, to me, it was easier to visualize what a progression over a career would look like for a guy like Jake with the skills that he had, the energy. It was easier to tell yourself a story about how he would really be able to grow within the program in that regard. But like we said, you can also go back and look and and kind of in retrospect, think about, hey, if you put yourself in his shoes, was there a really clear path to playing time even this year? I don't know that there necessarily was, barring, a few other things needing to happen, I would guess. So I kind of get it. But yeah, I think Jake, just based on, kind of system fit, would be the one I would miss more.
Ryan, are you on the same page there?
Yeah, I think it's Jake, just because of the energy, the athleticism, his ability maybe defensively with that energy and athleticism if he got more playing time, and his rebounding ability. And I think that those.
Clifton showed some energy and athleticism too.
He did
in his minutes out there.
The problem with Clifton was it's almost like we don't know what he can be. That's a huge lump of clay that has not been developed, and he's a guy who he can handle the ball a little, he can shoot a little, but does he want to be a back to the basket guy who occasionally steps out? Does he want to be a Kevin Durant type who plays facing forward? I mean, it really, I think that somebody needs to harness his skill this summer and really drill into him what style of player he wants to be, because we've seen so many different things just watching his high school highlight tapes and watching what we've seen from him on the court in short bursts at Indiana. There just isn't a coherent fit of what he wants to be. Whereas Jake, I thought the path towards success was pretty simple, and it's you develop his offensive game slowly from the inside out, and you work on things like screening, defense, things that he can do instantly, and then you work on his ability to score the basketball from the inside out, on non-dunks, because we know he can dunk it, we know he can put it home. He did have that last dunk that was pretty great in it was one of the NIT games, I think, where he just, went down the lane and hammered it home. But, he could do that. But somebody needs to develop him as an inside scorer and then slowly move out to a jump shot, because, that's obviously not something he does well right now. But, he the path to developing him into a really good Big Ten player was there, and it was laid out. And there are some people today saying, here's hoping he doesn't find a fit and comes back and doesn't enters the transfer portal and decides to come back. So
he said bye though officially.
I know, but who knows what's going to happen? But some people are saying that because they like Jake and they like what they think he can bring. That was really my point, is that people are hoping that he doesn't find a transfer spot. But I agree. I think that it makes the most sense for him to leave, given who's coming in and who's already there. And if Race Thompson doesn't redshirt, and maybe he's a sophomore and he's a year ahead of Jake, but they're the same year, and Race is clearly the guy who is, done better in the coaching staff's mind.
So we got a question from Jeff. He said the first two players to opt for transfer aren't surprising to most fans. Is there another shoe to drop? Obviously, Romeo left, but we all expected that. I would not be shocked by anything just because it's college basketball and guys transfer all the time. But I think now, Romeo's leaving. You've got two guys that have announced they're going to transfer. I wouldn't be shocked, but I would be surprised if we hear of anybody else, especially by this point. Like, you would think that it would have come out by now. Or
and I
do you
think
kind of feel the same?
After another week or two, I think we'll all feel safe that nobody's moving on. Of course, it'll depend on who comes in. I mean, if another player comes in and another player feels like they're going to lose their playing time to them, then yeah, maybe we do see somebody else exit. But I agree with you, Jared, that by now you probably would have heard. I was surprised that Jake news took this long to come out. I was looking at it today and thinking, wow. Or the other day, I guess, when the news kind of leaked, I was kind of thinking, wow, that took a while. It's right after the season. But some guys aren't planning on transferring. Then they have their exit interview and decide, moving forward, that's what they want to do. I think with Clifton, it was boiling for a while, and it was probably coming for a while, and so that makes sense. I mean, the fact that Romeo Langford didn't announce to the NBA until today was pretty incredible, because we all knew he was leaving. I've still heard repeatedly that he doesn't plan on hiring an agent right away, so I don't know what that means, but he doesn't really need to.
His dad's going to handle everything.
Yeah, his dad will probably handle everything, and honestly, I don't know why anybody hires an agent right away, unless you're just 100% convinced you're gone. And because anything can happen at the combine. We know Romeo's having surgery on his hand as well. So yeah, this stuff, I mean, the season's been over for a week now. This stuff usually leaks out right after it ends, but I would say after about another 10 days, I'd say we shouldn't expect any more transfer news. But who knows over the next few days what happens.
Yeah. All right, coming up on the Assembly Call, we're going to assess Indiana's current list of targets in terms of both priority and likelihood of coming to IU, and then we'll spend some time reflecting on Romeo's 1 year in Bloomington. What is the lasting impact? Is there a lasting impact? We will discuss that next. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. Excellent. What the heck just happened? Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got some weird note from... That's strange. Okay, well, I got a weird note from Zoom, but it looks like everything's okay. Hello to everybody who's watching live. Awesome to see you all here, as always. Let me see. That was 20 minutes and 18 seconds. That was a nice, hefty first segment. So we won't belabor this first one. I think we can kind of quickly talk priority because we talked about this a little bit last week, but we got a lot of questions about it. And then we'll talk about Romeo's freshman season.
Yeah, there were a couple other guys. I cannot because my computer is not functioning. But there was somebody had put on Inside the Hall forum something that Goodman had tweeted. There was a couple of, or something he put out. There was a couple other guys that were IU was mentioned for in their transfers.
Oh, really?
Let me see if I can find it.
I know Kyra Lewis. I know they've already contacted Kyra Lewis. I don't know if he's going.
Yeah, he was not among the. I don't know that they listed.
I mean, who knows if he's even visiting? Everybody's going after him. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That's kind of a no-brainer.
yeah. Same with Quinterly, I'm sure. But Quinterly apparently Pitt is being linked very heavily to him.
Capel dropping the bag for some? No, that couldn't be.
By the way, in
bags of cash.
I'm going to enjoy in 6 years when UCLA hires Kevin Stallings, by the way, since they're just going with every ex-Pittsburgh coach.
God,
Hey.
I can't wait for anyone to hire Kevin Stallings. That'd be freaking fantastic. I sent you that. So there might be a couple other guys. If you just like do a search for Indiana in there, it'll have a couple guys. One of the guys, Brunk is in there, obviously, but there's another grad transfer from Akron. Who's
Daniel Utomi. That's right. I forgot about him.
So he's on there, although he's like a 6'6". They list him as a power forward, but the quick scout says a 4-man with some 3-man skills, elite shooter with size, more of a straight line 1 or 2 drill guy, good team defender.
The kid from South Dakota
heard a ton about him yet.
My favorite part about all of these is that basically just staying true to brand, like Nevada is listed on nearly every player on here.
They're gonna need bodies though, man.
And then there's another guy who's I think Louisiana Tech, but he'd have to sit out.
Yeah, Anthony DeRuggi.
And then the guy that they should go after is David Jenkins, dude. The guy from South Dakota State shot 45% from 3 last year.
Yeah, anybody who can shoot 40% from 3.
I read something saying he was like a West Coast guy, and he might even follow. I could even see him following the coach to where'd that Otzelberger go? UNLV? Is that where he went?
Yes.
Ryan's a West Coast guy. He took his shooting talents.
San Diego guy.
True.
All right.
True. So anyway, that just might be a couple others to hit on while you're.
I'm looking for Indiana matches.
Kent Sterling asked an interesting question on Twitter. Would we feel better if IU was playing in the NIT championship right now? Of course.
Yeah.
It would have been great to keep playing.
Yeah.
I mean,
who made the final? I didn't even see.
Lipscomb and Texas. Lipscomb beat Wichita State.
Yeah.
I did see that score. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Lipscomb in Texas.
I forgot that was
the Fighting Shaka Smarts.
Yeah, Shaka Smart money finally paying off for Texas. Good for them.
Wow.
Shaka Smart catching some shrapnel on the assembly call.
They got problems.
Okay. All right. Let's do this.
Yep.
Let's do this. Where are we at here? Okay. Let me make sure that my mic is still. Yeah, I don't know what that error message was. That was odd. But it looks like everything's okay.
Everything sounded normal.
All right, cool. Here we go. Wait a second. Okay, so now I've got an issue here. Hang on. Ryan, talk real quick.
You've got plenty of issues.
Nah, see, that's... All right, so hold on a second. I need to reopen this up. Yes, so something's wrong with my local recording. All right, give me just a second. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment.
So, Andy, how's things been, man?
Not that great. No.
Yeah, what you need to explain? Like,
Oh,
you
it's
got
just been a
everybody
long,
worried now.
just been a long week. A lot of work things going on. Nothing bad in the grand scheme of things
No,
at
I
all.
can't hear anything.
Welcome to my world, buddy.
Yeah, just
I've only got 4 people on staff now for a while. Building a new staff. It's fun.
building a new. Yeah, I'm having a little bit of that myself. Been doing some interviewing and such. So yeah, what are you gonna do? But now it's just been busy. So not bad though. Trying to figure out what to do with my time now that there's no like basketball on. And
I like it. It's a tough week, but I've got plenty of free time.
well, in the evenings I do, which has been somewhat filled up by work. But yeah, it's weird that I realize that I don't.
Who are you picking for the Final Four? Who do you think's going to win?
I picked Virginia at the beginning, so I guess I'll stick with that.
That was
I'm
my
sticking
pick.
with them.
That was my pick at the beginning. I had Virginia, and I have like 5 groups that I'm in, and I never do the same bracket for all 5 because it's just, I don't know. I just like doing different ones. But I had Virginia or Gonzaga winning the title.
Yeah, those are the 2 that I had too.
Yeah, and Gonzaga should not have lost to Texas Tech. They played like garbage.
Oh,
But I think
well, also, oh, hey, I'm just going to step a foot out of bounds right in front of the referee. He assuredly won't notice that. This is the time of year that I get excited, where everybody else who only watches college basketball during the tournament can get exposed to the wonder that is college basketball officiating.
It's so bad, man.
That we've all loved and enjoyed.
But I mean, if you're
many months now.
But honestly, if you're Gonzaga in that game, how are you not feeding Hachimura every single time down the floor? They were like shooting threes with Norvell and what's his name, Perkins, and just not. I mean, dude, you have a
Norvell doesn't really have a great understanding of when he's not shooting well.
In time and score either.
Yeah,
like he's a chucker. He's a chucker.
Okay, I think we're back now.
All right, are we back?
I'd like to thank the dude who put in the chat Assembly Call is a multi-billion-dollar operation. We shouldn't be having audio problems. fair point. Also, I just happened to look up in the chat and I see Megan just said Ryan can suck it. So not sure what prompted that.
She said
just
because it's just a general.
That's just a good motto to go by.
She just has that in the text expander when she types Ryan out.
Under any
Automatically, it's the first thing that comes up. No, it's because I said that I jokingly said that I don't care if you guys come to Maui or not. No, obviously I'm excited. I want everyone to be there. I was just being a jerk. It's what
being
I
a little salty.
It's what I do in the afternoon. Come on, guys. Before I start having some of Grandpa's old cough medicine.
Ooh, yes. Okay, now let's do this for real. Here we go.
Okay.
Not for fake this time.
Yeah, we're doing it for real.
So make sure Ryan knows that this is going to be on the podcast. That's important.
Will this be on the podcast?
Yes.
Oh, the podcast is off?
No. Podcast is on. Okay, here we go. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to participate in our unedited live broadcasts,
Chat mobbers,
or watch those replays, then check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. As Chat Mobber Chad once put it,
Hearing the stuff in between, you get to know you guys a lot better.
like the time last Thursday when Ryan kind of showed off his sensitive side a little bit. Between that and Podcast on the Brink, that's plenty of content to fill for the off season.
We don't do podcasts on the brink, so
But I mean,
I've never been a guest on that show, by the way. Still, thanks, guys.
oh, do you want to be a guest on that show?
Hopefully you're finally getting the hint. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Guys, I'm resigning.
So Ryan resigned, but he's back. So he entered the transfer protocol, pulled it back. Maybe sometime this offseason.
Like a cockroach after the nuclear holocaust. You're going to have so much trouble getting rid of me.
Maybe this offseason we'll do a special edition Podcast on the Brink. Ryan Phillips mailbag. Ask him anything. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. So we got several questions, obviously, about the guys that Indiana is targeting. And so, I thought we would just take this, Ryan and Andy, with, kind of who we think are the priorities. And again, you don't want to get too serious about guys until you actually hear about visits. So this list is, kind of short. But right now, this is kind of all we have to go on. I mentioned a lot of them at the top of the show. Trendon Watford from the class of 2019, Lester Quinones. Harlan Beverly is another guy, has done an unofficial visit, hasn't done an official visit yet. I think he just got offered by Kansas. So, his recruitment is kind of stepping up. And then you've got Joey Brunk, the grad transfer, Jalen Wyndham, a guy in the class of 2019. There's been a lot of speculation about him from Ben Davis, decommitted from Georgia State when Ron Hunter went to Tulane or Tulsa, wherever he went. And then you've also got Daniel Utomi, a 6'6", kind of like a small forward in a power forward's body, or power forward in a small forward's body from Akron, who's a pretty good three-point shooter. So let me ask you, Andy, we'll go to you first. As you look at this in terms of priority, I mean, all of these guys I think could fit, specific roles. But if you had to list out kind of your priority, for what would you list that as for these guys?
I think Quinones is interesting because of, being a guard, somebody who can, kind of play make on the wing and a decent shooter from what it sounds like. I think that makes him potentially the most intriguing. I mean, as we've talked through biggest hole on the roster, wish list, whatever you want to call it, I think wing or backcourt scorer was pretty high on everybody's list. So that's probably where I would lean. Watford, I think from an overall ranking standpoint is good. And I think he could fit that bill a bit as well. And with the front court getting a little bit thinner, I would say those two guys, just because you could potentially have them for a few years.
Yeah.
But I think there's things to be intrigued by with the others. Brunk is a 2-year grad transfer. To me, makes him more interesting, and is a lot more interesting now that you've had some of the other guys leave. So those would be maybe the 3 out of that. I don't know enough about Utomi to really have a good handle on it, other than what I've read, which seems like he might be able to fit a little bit of that, but also maybe a bit of an kind of undersized power forward guy that seems like a little bit less of a great fit potentially than what you'd have. But I would say the 2 freshmen, or the 2 incoming freshmen, would be at the top, and then maybe Brunk shortly thereafter.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, when we only had one scholarship open, you kind of debate Brunk. Is that really the biggest need? But now that Clifton and Jake are gone, and you're going to have Brunk for a couple years, I think he is an important priority and seems likely. So he kind of fits both of those bills.
He also provides some insurance against Duran not
Huge.
Getting injured again and all that stuff. So I think that's why Brunk has sort of elevated on that list now that other guys have left. My opinion, you almost have to put these into 2 categories. Is you need a post player now. I mean, with guys leaving. So Brunk is kind of a must get at this point. I wouldn't put him as the top priority if you're looking for what resources you're going to put into it, as far as talent goes and skill and everything, but you need a post guy. And so Brunk has become, it's almost like you're recruiting 2 different sets of guys. One of them is Brunk, and you've got to, if you go get him, you have a 2-year guy. He's a backup plan for Duran Davis. He's also a guy who, gives you another post guy who can practice, and he's 6'11". He's a guy you can have your younger guys who are maybe smaller, like Race Thompson, Trace Jackson Davis, go up against daily in practice. He's well-rounded. He's played in college basketball before, and he's an effort guy. So you kind of look at that and you're like, all right, that's a guy we can have around. Great practice player, likely a great practice player, and somebody who can provide you something offensively.
And even if Duran's healthy, you need someone who can play 16, 17 minutes.
And spell him. Yeah, of course. As for the other guys, I would put Brunk kind of in a category by himself because of that issue. Yeah. I would say Quinones is number 1 because of his shooting ability. It's great.
Over Trendon? See, I think Trendon's the top priority.
This is what I was gonna say. I think Quinones is number 1 as far as direct need. As far as ability overall and what he can do for the program long term, probably Trendon Watford is number 1. But if you're looking at just straight priorities, Quinones is a great shooter who you could get to come in and fit in with that young backcourt, especially with Romeo now gone. I mean, we all knew that was going to happen, but now that it's official, they're going to need a scoring, option from the backcourt unless all these other guys really develop. So I would say Quinones and Watford really 1A, 1B, but Quinones really fits with what they're trying to do. Watford's the best player out of these guys, I think. I don't think there's any question about that. But just as purely a need and fit thing, Quinones is very important. If they don't get Watford or Quinones or Beverly, which is certainly possible because these are late recruitments. You never know how these are going to go. I think Jalen Wyndham's a really nice player. I think his stock has elevated big time since he made his commitment to Georgia State. And I think he's a guy who can shoot it. He can do some things. If that's not a bad fallback option, it really isn't. He's a pretty good player. Now, look, is he going to come in next year and light the world on fire? No. But he's
I mean, Kihei Clark for Virginia was ranked in the 300s. You know what I mean? So you got to be careful with some of those rankings.
Right. It's not all about the rankings. A lot of it's about player development. And you've seen that a lot in this tournament. And I wrote a piece this week on the Big Lead, and you tweeted it out. So thank you, Jared. But about how there are no one and done teams, the one and done players in the Final Four. There are none. And a lot of these guys are guys who maybe some of them were good recruits. Kyle Guy was a good recruit, but he's developed and become a much better player. You look at Michigan State. They've got guys who have developed and become better players. Kenny Goins was a walk-on. Cassius Winston was highly rated, but he's become so good because of the development there. Texas Tech lost 5 starters, developed all their guys, and look at them. They've become a powerful team there. So I think that, and Auburn, guys that everybody else missed on. These guys all came up. They don't have the size. They don't have the shooting ability. They don't have X. They don't have Y. They don't have Z. They all got better, and they all became much better as the season went along and as their careers went along. So, again, it's less about the stars and more about developing. 5-star players are great. They make life so much easier because they come ready-made in a lot of situations, but you've got to develop the talent you have. Rob Finney may wind up long-term being more valuable than Romeo Langford was to this program because of the development and the fact that he's going to be here a long time. Now, Romeo made it okay for Trace Jackson Davis to decide to come here too, and so there is value there as well. But you look at what those guys can give you, it's about developing him. And so a guy like Jalen Wyndham, I wouldn't be upset about putting a scholarship on a guy like that. He can play. He's a tough guy. He and Armand Franklin would be fun to add to the backcourt, I think. But if you're looking straight priorities, I think Quinones is number 1. I think Brunk is in there number 1 as the post guy. You'd love to get Trendon Watford. I think that would be awesome. But if you're looking straight at priorities, getting Quinones on campus is a big deal.
And again, like Indiana is not leading for any of those guys. It still seems pretty unlikely that they're going to get any of those. But I would like to see one of those 3 kind of highly rated guys who are in the class of 2019, Trendon, Quinones, or Beverly. I'd like to see us get one of those guys. And then, Brunk, a guy like Wyndham. I think that would be a really good balance for how you use those. Or if there's another grad transfer, an older guard that you could get that could help shore up your backcourt, something like that, that would be nice too. So we'll have to see what else develops because I'm sure some other names will pop up on the radar screen as we move forward. So I want to talk a little bit about Romeo, and I think, we'll probably end up doing a full episode on this because it's going to warrant more talk, but, it all kind of came down, just earlier today, so we didn't have a ton of time to prepare for it. But, Andy, as Romeo announces, and look, we knew it was going to happen, but I think the one wrinkle that we found out about today was that, he dealt with a torn ligament in his wrist since November, had surgery on it today, apparently. Does that at all change how you view his performance as a freshman, the season as a whole, and just as you reflect on Romeo, what do you think his legacy is that he's leaving at Indiana after one season?
Yeah, for me, I don't feel like it changes a great deal. I think everybody had some, he had that cast on it a little bit in the summer, and he had it wrapped most of the year. So I think probably would have been naive to think there wasn't something there. I mean, maybe the extent of the injury, no one really knew, but you knew it was something that bothered him. You saw him kind of flex it and move it around a little bit while he was playing and during games. So I think you knew that it was something that was bothering him. And I don't think you really know until presumably you see him in the NBA, how much that really affected his shooting, because for those of us who watched him predominantly at IU and not a ton in high school, other than, highlight tapes and things like that, you don't really, your context for what kind of shooter he is came from watching him at IU. So, time will tell whether that's true. I certainly appreciate the fact that he, played through that injury and tried to, make the best of it and seemed to carry a burden of responsibility for what he needed to do and wanted to do for the team. And I also think we haven't been as quick to kind of jump on him as maybe some folks do. So I would imagine there are many people whose opinions perhaps did change about him. I just don't know that for me that was the case, but I think he was a guy who played, came into a situation and played tons of minutes. I mean, as you look, he was 85% of available minutes in conference play, which was 11th. Did a good job getting to the rim and finishing and drawing fouls and things like that. I think a lot of what everybody expected from him from a basketball perspective, perhaps minus the winning, I thought he really delivered on, and find it hard in a lot of ways to, sit the parts of the season that would be deemed as failures at his feet, and feel like he, did less than, try his best for IU and represent the program well and all those kinds of things. So I don't know that it changes my opinion a lot. I would like to think or hope that perhaps it did change some others.
Yeah, and as several people have noted in the chat mob, the fact that it was never used as an excuse all season long, when it was, obviously lingering, I think that's impressive. And someone mentioned it's hard to have a legacy with 1 year, and it is for most guys. But Romeo's a little bit different because of the relationship that the state had with him, how big the recruitment is. And again, the answer may be like, he's not leaving any legacy because Indiana didn't win. They made the NIT. He didn't even play in the NIT. He was just here. It's a blip on the radar screen. But I do think, Ryan, you alluded to this earlier, that, in a rebuild, sometimes that first big recruit can help get things going, like Cody Zeller did for Tom Crean. Even though, as Christian Watford was quick to point out on the Hoosier Hysterics podcast, those guys were really the movement and kind of got things going even beforehand. But Cody Zeller, from an in-state standpoint, and Romeo could have a similar impact, for Archie, like you said, with making it okay for those guys to go and Trace Jackson Davis coming. So that can be a part of the legacy that he would leave too. But how, on this day when he leaves, how are you viewing everything?
Well, I just want to say, you don't get Trace Jackson Davis if Romeo Langford doesn't commit. And it's not that Trace didn't like IU. It's that somebody had to be the first. Maybe Trace would have been the first, but I don't think so. I think that Romeo picking IU in such a high profile way was an enormous boost to the program. And we will see that play out over the years. And I don't think his legacy is set yet. What I will say about Romeo, you look at the numbers, and I know that winning is what everybody's going to remember, but you look at the numbers, and we broke them down, Jared. I mean, where is he, like the third best freshman season of all time at IU, or it's certainly up there. One of the best freshman seasons of all time, certainly.
Yeah, you got Calbert, Eric Gordon, Mike Woodson, those are the names
let's say like top five.
Yeah, especially from a scoring and rebounding standpoint, those are the names that he's mentioned with. And
you look with the guys who have played at IU over the years, and you say you were a top 5 freshman of all time at IU, that's pretty darn good. And so for people who say like it was underwhelming, well, the team was underwhelming. The team was underwhelming in 12 of 13 games in the middle of the season, and he's certainly a part of that. But you don't put that all on him. And I think we certainly were tough on him at times. I certainly was about, not knowing when to take over. But you also, every time you do that, you have to note he's a 19-year-old kid. He shouldn't have to do that all on his own. I put a lot of that on Juwan Morgan, who I love. But Juwan Morgan needed to know when to take over games as well. I mean, there's just certain aspects of the game you have to know, and I think Romeo will be better for that. Learning about his hand, I think we all knew. I had heard whispers there was a problem with his wrist and hand during the season. He had the wrap on it all year. We all knew that, but really learning how bad it was and knowing that it was a torn ligament that he needed to have surgery on and not something that could just get better on its own. That kind of explains some of the shooting woes. Maybe he got used to it as the season went on because he certainly became a better shooter as the year went on. Not remarkably better, but better. But, for a kid to play through that, he could easily sat out and said, I'm just going to sit out. He was an NBA draft pick last year before he ever, he was a lottery pick before he ever entered IU. He didn't have to play this year to be a lottery pick. He could have just used IU's facilities and rehabbed, and, we could have heard about how great he was in practice, and that would have been that. But no, he wanted to play for IU. He got on the court, and he was Archie's first big commit. And I think that will hold a legacy in its own. If Archie Miller goes on and wins a national title at IU or has like a great career at IU, you will look back to that signing ceremony and how excited this state got and pumped up it got behind IU. And you're seeing guys like Armand Franklin and Trace Jackson Davis represent Indiana already, by traveling up to Keon Brooks's ceremony and things like that. Even a guy who's not going to go where they're going to go, representing the state and trying to be that next ambassador at Indiana to represent the state, as Romeo was. And I think that might be his legacy, is that IU players move the needle in this state more than anything else, more than the Colts, more than the Pacers, more than, maybe Peyton Manning did more, but, and without a superstar in this state, honestly, IU players move the needle more than anything else. And I think Romeo committing to IU was an earthquake, and everybody heard it and felt it. And it kind of brought that back because that had been lost for a while.
Yeah. Well, like I said, this is a topic that we will address more coming up in the offseason, but I think we're all in agreement, and I'm sure most of you listening are too, that, we wish Romeo nothing but the best as he prepares for his NBA future, and we'll all be cheering him on wherever he gets drafted and wishing him a wonderful career, which he's certainly capable of having. All right, coming up in our third segment, we're going to answer your questions, which include one about how the selection of this year's NCAA tournament field might impact IU scheduling next season, and another about Calbert Cheaney, who received a long overdue honor this week. Stick with us on the Assembly Call. All right, 17:23. We're at 37:41. Andy?
What are we, 50? It's 50. Did
50,
it change?
50 minutes now. 50 minutes.
See, it's 50. See,
Yeah,
you
50.
can't change it.
I know you got to change.
12, 19.
Everything has changed now.
12, 19.
Yeah, 12, 19.
37, 41.
And then 36 seconds.
11, 43.
43.
I was told there would be no math on this.
Nope. Always math. All right. 11:43. There we go.
That's a lot.
And again, when you hear this drop, that means it's a time.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
That means
Are we just doing questions in the final segment?
Yeah. And we've got a few of them, but we can kind of chew on them.
You can ask me what I think of the UCLA hire. Is it done yet?
Is that actually official?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's happened. Aren't they like negotiating a buyout or something?
Which why should the school accept any less than what the buyout is? I don't get that.
That makes no sense.
No
sense.
Yeah, from their standpoint, they're putting it in there for a reason.
Yeah, and now he's like, we're going to negotiate it. Okay, it's not really.
Done.
It's not done yet, so we don't even have to talk about it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's hop in and do this thing.
By the way, Calipari and his agent, masterful.
Oh yeah, of course.
Played the Bruins like a fiddle. And how are they not throwing everything at Chris Beard? Like how are they not going after him full bore? Like what makes no sense?
Yeah, because Beard might actually be okay, like flying commercial and stuff. He might not know he hasn't, he's been at smaller programs. He might be able to take the step down. Okay, let's do this. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips. Remember that you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU news roundup, even during the offseason. And then after games, once those start up again, we send out a detailed post-game analysis.
There's a high-level operation going on out there.
All you have to do is text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com to join.
Make no excuses.
All right, so it is now time for our mailbag, and all questions here submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about at assemblycall.com/community. So we got a scheduling question from Jay, which I will ask here in just a second, Andy, and get your perspective on it. But we also had some interesting scheduling news today, as it was confirmed that Indiana will be in the Maui Invitational for 2020. Nice little recruiting pitch that you can add there, maybe for Trendon, Lester, or Harlan. Hey, you guys want to go to Hawaii? We're going to be going there in 2020. So the field, Alabama, Davidson, Indiana, North Carolina, Providence, Stanford, Texas, and UNLV.
One note. Indiana's last two trips to Maui, I was there. Neither were great, so we need to turn that trend around badly.
So that means you don't go this time. Or you
I'm going because I'm there every year. So,
so that's good news. That is exciting news. Obviously, next year Indiana, still has that exempt event with Arkansas, UT Arlington. Is it all the same teams? UT Arlington and UC Davis, or do those teams rotate and it's just Indiana and Arkansas are the same?
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, anyway,
arena preseason tournament next year.
No, that's our exempt event. Is that
okay?
It's that tournament.
I didn't
don't know if it's
realize
the
that
same
event
teams.
was a multi-year thing. I just thought the Arkansas component of it was. So yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's not. But either way, I did see that Fran Caffrey's name was mentioned with Arkansas. So wouldn't that be interesting?
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be really fun. Talk about 40 minutes of hell.
Okay. You know who else was mentioned with that job? Another former Iowa coach,
Oh, yes.
Steve Alford, right
Yes.
there. He's right there.
Yeah, he is. Best wishes to you, Ryan.
Looking
so
over you always.
yes, Andy, here's the question from Jay. Given what we think we learned from the selection committee this season, what sort of approach do you expect Archie to take with building a schedule for the upcoming season, taking into account IU already has Arkansas at home, Notre Dame and Indy, and, of course, an ACC Big Ten Challenge game?
This year, if you look, there were 11 non-conference games, and there were really 4 that mattered. So I could kind of see that formula being relatively similar. I think the 20-game Big Ten schedule does put you in a little bit of a tough spot. I think there's an argument to be made this year that, just some of the teams that got in and the seeds they got were based on having a gaudier win total. So if you factor in that you're going to have an 11-game non-conference season next year, I think you're going to have 7 games that you should probably walk in. Maybe an 8th. Maybe they stick with just those 3. But you also, they may have an idea of who the Big Ten ACC opponent's going to be. But I don't know that, those other couple, Notre Dame was a bit of a transitional year for them this year. What do they really look like next year? Arkansas, the coaching situation is a bit up in the air. So I think that's an odd one as well. So I don't know, again, that you can count on those games while they are against major conference teams, and they're probably not going to hurt you. I don't know if they're going to help you a whole lot. So I could see maybe trying to find one other little bit bigger name team to have. And I think the other thing I would, I'd like to see them continue to move further away from some of these, sub 300 teams. I guess from a Ken Pom perspective, there are only 2 this year, but I think a few teams outpaced where they were really supposed to be.
No more Chicago States.
Yeah, you still had, though, outside of the top 246 or lower, you still had 5 of those. So I'd like to get a little bit more away from that, but I do think you saw a little bit this. It will be interesting to see just in general scheduling in college basketball that on the one hand, you felt like teams were rewarded just for winning games. On the other hand, you had a team like NC State, who had the worst non-conference schedule in the league or in the country, get left out because they didn't have enough quality wins overall. So it's easy to point to the ones that are, hey, you ended up getting 20, 21, 22 wins, and that helped you get in. But I think there are other cases like the NC State case where the scheduling still matters. I thought Iowa probably got seeded lower than you would have thought because their non-conference strength of schedule wasn't very good. So you can't punt it completely and play only, Southland and SWAC teams and, just ride it out from there.
Did you mention the potential for a Gavitt Games appearance?
I did not. I don't remember how that works. You play.
Well, each team I think is supposed to play a minimum of 4.
So many.
Yeah, Indiana's already played in it 3 years, and I think every Big Ten team is going to do it a minimum of 4 years. So they could be in it, they couldn't, because there's 8 games each year. So there's a potential for a game there too.
But it's like 4 games out of how many years? It's a certain number of games within a particular period of years, right? If I remember that correctly. I think IU's had one the last 2 years, so I was kind of in my head thinking that maybe they would not this year, but I don't know.
Yeah, like Michigan State hasn't had any because they're in the Champions Classic, so they're going to have to get caught up at some point, or maybe they're not going to be in it. I don't know. It's an 8-year deal, by the way.
One side note: can we get like Wake Forest or maybe Georgia Tech in the Big Ten ACC Challenge next year and get it at home instead of playing Duke or North Carolina every single time?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say no. That's probably not going to happen.
No.
It's a TV event, Ryan. It's made for TV. So
yeah, it's also made for. Never mind.
Oh no, I really wanted to hear what that was going to be.
You'd have to bleep it on the radio
or create a drop. Okay, so next question. This is from JD. Everyone else is asking about transfers, which I get and I'm also interested in. But what is your favorite Calbert Cheaney memory, story, or thing from his personal story that surprised you the most? He needs to get some airtime this week for sure, because this week Calbert Cheaney was selected for the College Basketball Hall of Fame. Congratulations to Calbert. I didn't even realize he wasn't in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. I figured he was, as a Wooden Award winner, the Big Ten's all-time leading scorer. Obviously one of the greatest Hoosiers of all time. Ryan, what are your...
What's a guy have to do to get in there, for heaven's
sake? No kidding. Ryan, what are your lasting memories of Calbert Cheaney? I know you weren't a big Indiana fan back then, but you're certainly aware of the legend that is Calbert.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I have one memory. I just remember watching him a lot. Now, Indiana with him was on national television all the time. And one of my earliest memories of consistently watching that red jersey is Calbert Cheaney, is number 40. And I'll always remember that jersey. And that is imprinted on me. I remember, it's funny because you think back to teams from that era, and there's always like the one player who stands out from each team. Like for Duke, Christian Laettner is the guy you think of when you think of that era of Duke, him or Grant Hill, Chris Webber or Jalen Rose from Michigan. There's just those iconic players, Larry Johnson at UNLV. Calbert is the Isaiah to me when I think back, and it's not Bob Knight on the sideline, it's Calbert playing and just watching him play and being amazed at what he could do, and some of the dunks he had and the way he finished and the way he could shoot and everything, just being such a well-rounded player. And I just remember watching him in those old school Indiana uniforms and just loving watching him. So, that's really my memory is, on like a Saturday when IU would get the national television game, just sitting down and watching him and being all the way out here in California and still being mesmerized by him.
Yeah, the two that stand out for most people, I think, are the shot against Northwestern that broke the Big Ten's all-time scoring record. With the epic picture where you've got the Cheaney needs one sign in there, which, by the way, if anybody knows what happened to that sign, I want it. Let me know where it is. And then, of course, you've got that epic moment against Louisville, and I think it was the Sweet 16 in 1993, where he went face to face with Morton from Louisville, and there's a great picture, and Calbert is not giving up any ground. It was just an awesome moment. So those are kind of the obvious ones. I remember because I probably saw every home game he played when he was at Indiana because we had tickets back then. And I just remember, when he got there, he kind of took everybody by surprise with how well he scored because he wasn't the most heralded member of that recruiting class. And he was such a good shooter, such a good scorer. I still remember this one time he got a breakaway dunk, and I don't remember who it was against, but he did like a reverse double pump dunk. And I was like, holy crap, this guy's an amazing athlete too, which I didn't like. He was just so smooth as a player, me being 10 years old at the time. I just didn't think about the athleticism, but he was such an incredible athlete. And then you had the great moment for their senior speeches where people will remember Chris Reynolds went up for a dunk against Illinois on a breakaway and missed it. Not a great moment for Chris, but then for his senior speech, he said that he wanted to actually complete the dunk. And so Calbert picked him up and Chris was able to complete the dunk. And, the other thing that I remember is just, he was such a great clutch player. And I looked earlier today in the tournament, in all his NCAA tournament games, and he played, 10 or 11 games in the NCAA tournament. He averaged 21.5 points, 7.7 rebounds per game, shot 61.3% from two and 82% from the free throw line, all higher than his career averages. And that wasn't just, padding it in the first round game. He played big in big games and was just such a great and consistent player for 4 years. The consistency was amazing. Andy, what other memories stand out to you?
I think what you said is how I think of it. In some ways, the consistency almost leads there to not be so, some of these like really standout moments. And maybe it's just because we're, so far removed from it. But yeah, it was just night in, night out. He was just a workmanlike effort. The Morton thing still kind of strikes me because it seemed a little bit out of character. He was really intense and a guy that didn't want to lose, but he never really had shown that kind of like get in somebody's face type of emotion. But I think the team really took a cue from him in that situation. That just seemed to me like, a different level of intensity from him, of that not backing down. And he was just fantastic in that game, pretty much single-handedly, took them out and stole Dwayne Morton's soul in the process. So that was definitely the one I would have said. Obviously breaking the record was cool because it was kind of a, vintage play that he had done so many times when he was there. And it was, watching him work off of screens and do some of those things, just the subtle things in the mid-range jump shots that today would be like outlawed and no one would be able to do.
All right, Ryan, in our final 20 seconds here, why don't you respond to this question that we got from, looks like Steve A., who wonders, how hilarious is this UCLA coaching search?
It's pretty hilarious. Calipari, absolutely played them. Just absolutely played them.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
All right.
And the last thing I'll say is they're going to wind up with a coach far below the station of the program.
And that'll do it for us on this week's edition of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, be part of the chat mob, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And you can always subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com to get our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again next Thursday. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Excellent. Sorry to cut you off. Did you have a longer answer? We didn't have any time.
Oh, of course I did, but I knew we didn't have much time. That was pretty much it. Is it Calipari just played him
He did.
to get his raise, which is what he should do.
Yeah, that's what he should do. That's what you do to us every offseason.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, payday's coming, boys. But yeah, the UCLA coaching search is it's hysterical. They came down to Mick Cronin and Jamie Dixon. Like, Mick Cronin's a nice coach for Cincinnati, and Jamie Dixon is at a good place in TCU, but he's been past the first round of the NCAA tournament like once in the last 8 years. Like, I know he's from Hollywood, but like, what on that resume is making you fall over backwards for Jamie Dixon? He's an $8 million buyout, and he's making like $3.2 million a year right now.
Lack of options, I guess.
Yeah, but like, I mean,
the Mick Cronin thing was strange. I mean, he's got his family and a lot has a pretty big legacy from a Cincinnati standpoint, but I just cannot see his,
like
his
an odd
personality meshing well. With
Although Ben Howland was an odd fit.
It was, and he was successful, and they ran him out of town.
But then they ran him out. So.
No.
He went to like 3 Final Fours, and they ran him out of town. But the thing about Ben Howland they didn't like was he was so defensive oriented that a lot of kids in LA didn't want to play for him because they want to play like an up-tempo, fun style. And that's why USC went and got Andy Enfield, because they thought it would just be like dunks and craziness, and maybe they'd wander into a Final Four. It hasn't worked, but
Final Four, NCAA sanctions, whatever. It's
whatever. Yeah. But like, seriously, I don't know what they're doing. And they did have Joel just mentioned in the chat that they had multiple coaches turn them down. They did. But if you throw enough money at coaches, they'll come. I mean, Chris Beard, I'm sorry. Nobody wants to stay in Lubbock forever. I mean, let's be honest. It's Lubbock, Texas. Like, nobody wants to stay there forever. And
apologies to all of our listeners in Lubbock.
Really? The tumbleweeds are listening in Lubbock. But no, I mean, it's not. I mean, people who live there don't like it. Like, it's, I mean, it's the guy who founded the town probably left 3 years after he did. I mean,
people from San Diego are so arrogant about their hometowns
we are,
and calling
because
out others.
We have a beach. Like, it's, we're arrogant because it's nice here. But honestly, like, you could get Chris Beard. You could go get Chris Beard if you paid enough money. If the basketball program is as important as they say it is, go get Chris. You spend a lot of money on Chip Kelly. Nobody knows if he's going to work out because it's not Oregon where he had Nike doing his recruiting for him and, all that stuff. And Phil Knight just let him do whatever he wanted. Go get a decent coach. UCLA is a beautiful campus. It is. You can go find somebody to hang out there. It doesn't have to be Jamie Dixon. But yeah, and the thing is, I like Jamie Dixon, like, as a person and all that stuff. He seems like a great guy, but that resume is not UCLA worthy. I think he's a step up from Alford slightly, just because at least he's likable. And Alford, people there could not stand him from the first summer he stepped on campus. So there's, they wanted to run him out of town for a while, but he kept making the Sweet 16. So they were just kind of like, what do we need to be able to, and he kept getting top recruits. Now the recruiting dried up. So what do we do now? So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I don't know.
All right. Well, I got to run. It's fun being here. Fun to see y'all. Thanks for being here. We'll be back next Thursday. I know what we'll talk about. Eventually, we'll get into our offseason player analysis pieces. We got to do our Archie Miller coaching grades. We got all kinds of offseason content planned. And then hopefully we get some commitments so we can do some scouting reports.
There we go.
There we go.
Nice.
All right, guys.
Cool. Ryan, go eat.
Andy, everybody have a lovely
maybe
night.
Get some sleep. Seems like maybe you need some rest.
Maybe.
He's got kids. He's never going to sleep.
This is true. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Later, guys.
All right. See y'all. See everybody.
Thanks.